Most people walk away from Sinister haunted by the Super 8 films, Bagul's face, or the eerie kids caught in his orbit. But the part that lingers with me isn't those home movies or the jump scares. It's the message of the ending. It's that moment when Ellison finally does what we begged horror characters to do all along. He gathers his family, leaves the haunted house, and dooms them all in the process.
Get the kids, pack the car, we have to leave.
For me, Sinister stands as Blumhouse's most unsettling work, not just for its scares, but for how it punishes seemingly rational choices. In today's cinematic postmortem, we'll look at what makes Sinister so haunting, how the story builds towards its final inversion, and why the act of leaving, the action we've always trusted in horror, turns out to be the deadliest choice of all. We all recognize the setup, a family under siege in their own home, strange noises rattling the walls, lights flickering, shadows creeping across empty spaces. That scenario inspires a visceral reaction in audiences. If the danger is in the house, the answer is to get out. Viewers themselves often voice it while watching. Just leave, they shout. It feels like common sense, a coded survival mechanism we bring to every new story. Movement suggests safety, while staying signals death. But Sinister quietly rewrites that rule, and later you'll see how that quiet rewrite becomes its ultimate trap. Part of what makes the subversion of the get out trope so pointed is Ellison Oswald himself. He isn't a passive participant caught in chaos, but a true crime author whose professional identity is tied to solving horrific mysteries. His past successes, built on persistence and research, shape how we read his choices. When he confronts the possibility that his family is in real danger, his decision to flee doesn't play like blind panic. Yes, he's stressed out, but it plays like calculation. Kind we trust from someone who has made a career out of reasoning through violence and finding clarity in chaos. Ellison's logicality is why the trope inversion carries so much weight in Sinister. Decades of haunted house stories have made leaving the house seem like proof of wisdom. A touchstone film like the Amityville Horror hinges on that very idea. The house itself is toxic, so the family escapes and redeems some measure of safety. By invoking familiar hallmarks, creaking attics, eerie recordings, and unexpected noises, Sinister leads you into believing it operates within similar parameters. The spell works because it draws from old rules without openly announcing it's about to challenge them. So, when Ellison finally does leave, you feel that sense of relief. Viewers who've long complained about stubborn horror characters finally get the reversal they craved. Ethan Hawke packs up his family, abandons the murder house, and steers away from the environment we've been taught to blame. Every detail on screen confirms that this appears to be the rational way forward, the route that earlier films framed as survival. The tension drops in these moments because we expect the familiar genre math to hold. But instead of releasing pressure, the decision only closes the trap. By presenting his choice as rational and deliberate, the film doesn't just defy cliché, it cleverly circumnavigates the audience's trust. Sinister thrives on that double movement. It first secures our faith in genre rules and in Ellison's intellect, and then uses both to set up betrayal. The unease we feel comes not only from Bagul's imagery and spectral children, but from the sense of being wrong about how horror works at a fundamental level, which opens up a deeper question. If the film punishes Ellison's rationality, how much of his downfall comes from his own mindset rather than from the demon waiting in the background? That irony, that his skill set as an investigator both convinces us to trust him and pushes him toward ruin, is what sharpens the film's tragedy. What makes Ellison's downfall compelling is that it isn't driven by reckless curiosity alone, but by an obsession that grows out of his own history. Early in the film, we learn that his first major success, a book called Kentucky Blood, didn't just sell copies. It actually helped police solve a real murder case.
Oh, you got it right in Kentucky Blood, I'll give you that. It's a fine piece of writing.
That detail grounds his ego in something concrete. He's tasted both acclaim and real-world impact, and the memory of that achievement turns every new case into a chance to repeat it. From the start, he isn't chasing ghosts as much as he's chasing a career-defining second act. And in that pursuit, his investigative instincts, which should shield him, steer him directly into danger. At home, this obsession plays against his family's need for stability. Tracy, his wife, delivers an ultimatum in one of the film's most honest exchanges. This project has to succeed, or the family leaves for good.
If this goes sour, like last time, I'll take Trevor and Ashley and go back home to my sisters.
That kind of domestic pressure makes Ellison's fixation feel less like abstract ambition and more like a real gamble. He craves the recognition of one more bestseller.
I just need another hit, that's all.
But the cost is visible every night when his wife's patience thins and his children struggle to adapt to yet another uneasy move. For him, though, the house is less a home than a stage on which he hopes to rebuild his identity. That mindset explains how he can rationalize choices that look absurd from the outside.
So what? You saw something weird, heard something spooky in the house?
Yes.
Living in a house that was a brutal crime scene doesn't strike him as reckless because he frames it as tactical. Proximity equals insight. In practice, this conviction makes him blind to the warning signs. He interprets risk as challenge and threat as a puzzle. And the more evidence he uncovers, the more determined he becomes to interpret it on his own terms. The film underscores this tension in a revealing flashback. On a talk show, Ellison speaks with conviction about wanting to give victims a voice, framing his work as a pursuit of justice. But the moment also punctures his self-image.
I'd rather cut my hands off than write a book for fame or money.
Watching it in hindsight, the clip highlights how far he's fallen. What once looked like noble purpose now feels tangled with vanity, a hunger for recognition that has since hollowed him out. The reels of the Super 8 crime films become the perfect mirror of that decline. Rather than recoil from them, Ellison handles them almost reverently, as if they're sacred artifacts that can restore his legacy. The movie lingers on him in the glow of the projector, alone in the dark, transfixed not only by the crimes, but by the possibility of reclaiming lost significance. In this light, his obsession isn't just about solving a mystery, it's about preserving a myth of himself. And that is what makes it so disturbing. Ellison can no longer tell the difference between seeking justice and feeding his own ego, leaving him blind to the real danger unspooling right in front of him. The symbols scattered across crime scenes work much the same way. To an ordinary person, they're marks of something incomprehensible and terrifying. To Ellison, they resemble a coded signature demanding exegesis. Each glimpse of Bagul's face woven into frames becomes not a warning, but a clue, one more detail to catalog in his growing web of notes. His notebook fills with sketches and connections, rituals of study that take him further from a protective instinct and deeper into almost academic obsession. It's hard not to believe that the tapes were arranged with someone like Ellison in mind. They contain no obvious answers, no theatrical monologues, only fragments pointedly incomplete, like riddles whose very gaps are irresistible to a mind trained to fill them. Each missing piece keeps him returning for more, convinced that the next reel holds the connective insight that will reveal the whole picture. What he never sees is that the very structure of the material ensures he can't disengage. His hunger to resolve the puzzle keeps him tangled in it. By the time he realizes his family is at risk, his habits have already guaranteed the damage. His skill set pushes him forward when stepping back would have been survival. So his skill set continually funnels him towards the tapes, and the tapes are the bait. But we can't talk about Sinister without talking about the demon behind it all, Bagul. Is Bagul frightening because of what he does on screen, or because of how he reshapes the logic that governs horror stories? That's the unsettling question that Sinister leaves you chewing on. Unlike slashers or zombies, his menace doesn't really come from acts of direct violence. What makes him memorable is subtler and, in some ways, more corrosive. He enters the story almost like a parasite of the narrative itself, twisting reasoning until the safest path becomes the most dangerous. That's a different kind of terror, and it's more existential than visceral. The film enforces this by making him an ambiguous figure. In the script and on screen, he is named Bagul.
There's been so little written on Bagul that no one has actually bothered to scan any of this material before.
Though the children who serve him call him Mr. Boogie, an innocent label that makes the horror even more unsettling. Scott Derrickson and writer C. Robert Cargill deliberately resisted calling him a straightforward demon. Instead, they lean toward the idea of a vaguely pagan or folkloric entity, something ancient but unmoored from a specific tradition. That choice of formlessness makes him harder to contain. You can't imagine a defined ritual banishing him because he is an anchor to any single mythology. He comes across less as a character from lore than as a free-floating predator of stories, ready to attach wherever fear provides an opening. The filmmakers underscored this impression by keeping Bagul fragmentary. He rarely appears directly and never in a way that offers a full sense of confrontation. His presence flickers through runes etched into walls, distorted images that pass in the blink of the Super 8 reels, and sudden glimpses in the frames Ellison pores over late at night. That flicker adds to the plausibility. You might have imagined it, or maybe your eye caught something that wasn't there. It also ties him directly to the artifacts of cinema within the story. These reels aren't just props, they're how he introduces himself, how he sets his ritual in motion. To deepen that texture, the production leaned on unsettling choices, incorporating internet-sourced images and layering soundscapes influenced by black metal and avant-garde music. These details keep him from feeling like a costume monster and instead suggest something mythic, stitched together from shards of cultural detritus. The genius of Bagul isn't in pulling out cheap jolts, it's in constructing a cycle where each new family repeats the violence of the last. And here's the sadistic flourish. He turns innocent things into the machinery of horror. Children aren't his victims in the traditional sense. They're his collaborators, unwilling film crews and movie stars. The Super 8 reels become his stage, a warped kind of cinema where the simple act of documenting atrocity creates the opening for him to linger. He isn't just a monster in those reels, he's the director, staging shot after shot by proxy until each family's story ends the same way. The reels act as both record and recruitment material, ensuring that with each new case, another child is drawn into his orbit and used to extend the cycle. That inversion, children as both killers and victims, intensifies the film's sense of unease. It turns the family unit inside out, turning something innocent into the vessel of destruction. The cruelty of the design lies in how it undercuts your instinctive survival choices. Horror logic says if your home is haunted or invaded by evil, distance brings safety. Sinister flips that. Staying only prolongs uncertainty. But leaving, that guarantees catastrophe. That's why Bagul lingers as one of Blumhouse's more unsettling creations. He doesn't impose through volume or spectacle. He rewrites trust in narrative logic, punishing families not for recklessness, but for trying to do the precise thing any audience or rational person expects them to do. By weaponizing the rules of the story, he forces every turn into a defeat, and it's in this framework that the final act strikes hardest. When Ellison, believing he has finally beaten the system, makes the very choice that locks him in his fate. Ellison's breaking point arrives when the final discovery in the attic makes clear that the threat isn't symbolic, but very much real. His response is swift and decisive. He wakes Tracy and the kids, loads the car, and drives off into the night. For once, the audience gets what we've always demanded. No hesitation, no stubborn denial. He abandons both the haunted house and the book that was going to get his career back on track.
If you've been mistreated, I want to know about it.
There isn't going to be any book.
The relief registers almost physically, as if at last a horror protagonist has broken the chain. For a few minutes, the movie plays like the rare case where common sense wins. That fleeting sense of escape is amplified by the change in the film's tone. The car ride feels like a transition out of oppression and danger. You almost believe the family has won and earned a final reprieve, but the precision of the trap becomes evident through Deputy So-and-so's warning phone call. He's pieced together the real timeline. Every murdered family left their haunted house before they were killed.
What's the problem?
Okay, the problem is that you moved.
Moving was never an escape. It was the mechanism that sealed their doom. Ellison doesn't realize it, but by choosing to relocate his family, he has placed himself exactly where he's supposed to be in this fatal pattern. This understanding reorders everything we've seen. The reels weren't tied to specific walls, nor was Bagul confined to a basement or attic. He was always distributed, portable, spreading slowly like a cancer that's metastasized. And now, by returning to their old house, the Oswalds enter the true execution site. The cruelest part of the reveal is not just the inevitability, it's also who carries it out. Ashley, the daughter Ellison cherished and shielded, becomes the very instrument of the final kills. Possessed and directed by Bagul, she transforms from an innocent child into the weapon that destroys the family. The corruption of a child's innocence gives the twist its sting. The tragedy doesn't just claim Ellison's life, it rewrites his role as a father into the setup for his own destruction.
Don't worry, Daddy. I'll make you famous again.
And that is what leaves Sinister's ending echoing in my head years later. The imagery of Bagul and the tapes matter, but it's the structure beneath it that makes the film so haunting. Instead of a parable where wisdom earns safety, we get a reversal where the smart move becomes the trap. That cruel paradox is what keeps the movie alive in your memory long after other supernatural stories fade, and it sets up a larger truth the film presses on us. The movie turns the smart move into the fatal move, and as a guy who agonizes about making the right decision, the idea that it could still lead to disaster keeps me up at night. What continues to give Sinister its sting is how it frames investigation itself as a danger. Ellison isn't just a man in over his head. His drive to decode each scrap of evidence is what leaves him vulnerable. It reminds me of Alan Parker's Angel Heart, where each step closer to the truth tightens the noose around Harry Angel's neck rather than loosening it. In both cases, the quest for answers is the architecture of the trap. That structure is part of why the film still resonates. On a $3 million budget, it earned nearly $88 million worldwide. And later studies measuring heart rates during horror screenings ranked it amongst the scariest films ever tested. But its impact isn't just about imagery and jump scares. It's about how quickly confidence crumbles when logic fails. The terror lives in lost control, the collapse of our plans, and how our best choices can still end in disaster, and not the monster itself. And that's why the film still haunts me. Ready to perform another cinematic postmortem on a classic film? Then be sure to check out my video on Kill List. You'll find a link here on the screen. I hope to see you over there.